So it's the final day of campaigning there. What's it looking like on the eve of the election? Who is more likely to win, do you think?
Well, yes, we're seeing a lot of the final big opinion polls coming out ahead of the polling stations opening tomorrow. At the moment, most of them have Anthony Albanese and his Labour Party just edging it at the moment. Although the gap between him and Scott Morrison's Liberal National Coalition has closed in the last few days, and that perhaps is indicating that we could see a hung parliament. That's where neither of the big parties gain a majority and therefore have to go and speak to independent candidates or minor parties in order to try and form a government. And that could be particularly interesting in this campaign. We've seen a lot of high-profile independent candidates campaigning in traditional Liberal stronghold seats, very well-funded campaigns, campaigning on the issues of climate change, and therefore they really could hold some power if there is a hung parliament. And it does seem that Scott Morrison is concerned. He's been on television this morning here in Australia, again, talking about his economic record, talking about how he still believes he can win this election. He's been crisscrossing the country today, visiting as many marginal seats as he can to try, and turn opinion towards him, get those crucial last votes as things go. And a lot of people here, well, they're very sceptical about polls and opinion polls. Just look back at 2019. A lot of people didn't think that Scott Morrison had any chance. He then pulled off a bit of a miracle victory in that election. So you wouldn't put it past something like that happening tomorrow. But at the moment, it does look like Labour do have the advantage going into the main stage of voting tomorrow.
And tell us, Adam, what are the big issues that are on the voters' mind as they decide on who to vote tomorrow?
Well, the cost of living situation is certainly the prominent issue, and it has been throughout this entire election campaign. We have seen inflation. It's a 21-year high. Interest rates were recently raised, and it's a very similar story to many places around the world, really. People's cost of living is going up, rent, fuel, groceries. People really are noticing it here, and it's become a big talking point. Liberal Scott Morrison, he has campaigned on the basis of how he has handled the economy. He's pointed to the pandemic and how well Australia did during the pandemic, certainly compared to a lot of countries around the world. Of course, the opposition, they're attacking the government on the economy, saying that they are not the government to guide people through this cost of living crisis. They're pointing to the fact that wages aren't keeping up with the cost of groceries and food. A couple of other issues, climate change is actually quite big. We've seen a lot of extreme weather events here, be it the bushfires, be it recent flooding. Climate change is becoming a lot more of an issue. And as I mentioned, those independent candidates, a lot of them are campaigning purely on the basis of climate change. Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, has received a lot of criticism from around the world about his handling of climate change. Anthony Albanese said it's time for Australia to get out of the naughty corner when it comes to climate change and start making a difference. Interestingly, though, COVID hasn't really been much of an issue. COVID has dominated this country for the last few years. We saw the borders closed for 2 years. We saw a number of lockdowns, particularly just for small amounts of cases. Now they have some of the highest case rates in the world. But interestingly, the politicians aren't talking about COVID as an issue. It might be because they don't want to, risk upsetting anyone if they have to talk about restrictions or anything like that. But it's sort of fallen off the radar. But definitely the cost of living crisis and climate change are the two big issues ahead of tomorrow.